Okay. Who's going to be victimized next? Dwayne! Why not?
Okay, I wanted to do something different. Denise mentioned my stream of consciousness journal entries, and this was the last one I read at our last meeting, which, due to external circumstances, and I mean that in every sense of the word, I could not be heard very well, so think of this as like a encore performance. I do come across these stickers in my wanderings, and I came across this one at Barb's bookstore in downtown Naperville. It's this one here. It says, if you can see that, it says grateful. Barb's, yeah, it's down there. You'll find it. You'll find it. But it's, I just took that and I just started writing, you know, whatever comes to mind. And this is what I came up with for it. What's the difference between thankful and grateful? Thankful is a feeling, grateful is an action. Thankful is the beginning of grateful, grateful is the completion of thankful. Thankful may consist merely of words. Grateful is shown in acts. So if I've got this right, when I pour out on paper what I'm thankful for, I'm being grateful. When I express thanks, that's being grateful. I want to be grateful. I need to be grateful. I need to cleanse my spiritual palate. I'm grateful for the pay my job provides. I'm grateful for the people at my job that know my work and appreciate it and tell me so. I'm grateful for my lunch breaks. I'm grateful for the drive home where I can decompress. I'm grateful for the podcasts I've found and listened to. I'm grateful I know how the Bluetooth on my car works. I'm grateful for a car that works. I'm grateful for places to go in my car. I'm grateful for Naperville. I'm grateful for the Mongolian barbecue. I'm grateful for the things that catch my eye in stores like stickers, chocolate bars, and pens. I'm grateful when those pens actually write. I'm grateful for journals and notebooks to pour my emotions, good or bad, into. I'm grateful for the writing inspirations they give me. I'm grateful for the people that listen when I share my words, whoever and wherever they may be. I'm grateful for Writers Group and the support they give, both in my writing and in my life. I'm grateful for the ability to support and promote them through my intrepid videography. I'm grateful for those who watch my videos, whatever they may be. I'm grateful for being welcomed into my church. I'm grateful for the glue God provides that holds me together. I'm grateful that God never leaves me nor forsakes me, even when my mind is clouded with intrusive thoughts. I'm grateful for the clarity in my head that allows me to express my thankfulness. And I'm grateful that if I can't be grateful, I can at least be thankful. Well, since it was your idea.
This down a little because I'm shorter than everybody else. I don't have a cheetah one though. I didn't. I gave you a prompt and I didn't write a single cheetah one at all. So I do have to tell you a little bit, I'll just give you a quick thing on the Cheetah Anthology. There was, the Herald News used to have a newsletter for a couple of years where people could share short stories and it went out to people. It was free for people who subscribed. And one young man had submitted a couple of stories and was out of ideas. And he said, I'd like to, another one. I can't come up with any ideas. And I said, ideas are everywhere. I can't come up with any. And I just started and Dwayne Walton's stream of consciousness, just coming up with these ideas. And the last one was, a baby cheetah appears on your porch and asks for a sandwich. And at that point, he's like, no, and he was done talking to me. But then we needed a prompt one night, and we threw that out as a writing prompt, and the results were so varied and hilarious and touching and everything in between. We turned it into a little bonus anthology. So that's what that is. And I'm looking to see, do I want something serious? Do I want something funnier? I have one. Here's one that's called The Child Prodigy. And let me, so how many in this room were parents at one point? Okay, so then possibly you can understand, you know, what that's like when you bring the baby home. So this is an excerpt from a novel. It's a young couple who adopted a baby who was premature. There's the baby is not usual, but they don't know that yet. And so I included an excerpt of what those first couple days home with this child was like. Although a month premature, John Peter passed his first medical exams, and after less than a week in the hospital, the doctor pronounced him healthy enough to go home. Keep him away from crowds for the first month, he said, and bring him to my office in a week for another checkup. Their first family ride home tinged bittersweet with the unexpected death of Debbie Collis hovering over Melissa's head. Why hadn't John Peter's mother taken better care of herself? And why had Derek waited until Debbie seized before acting? Her swollen appearance magnified the urgency for medical help, didn't it? As if sensing Melissa's thoughts, John said, "They're waking Debbie tomorrow night right here in Jensen. I think we should go." Melissa almost cheered John's proposal. Despite the callous and condescending holding tape remarks John had made about Debbie, his sense of decency had prevailed. Then Melissa recalled the final instructions. "Dr. Rothgard told us to keep John Peter away from crowds. You're not suggesting we leave him with a babysitter?" "Of course not. He can stay in the heated car. We'll enter the funeral home by turns." John carried the still sleeping baby up the back steps and into the hushed and still house. With great reverence, John laid the baby in the cradle by his side of the bed. John Peter grimaced in his sleep, and John steadied him with one hand. John Peter's breathing faded into the soft sighs of baby's sleep. Melissa smiled as she watched him dream. Because of Debbie's tremendous sacrifice, Melissa's most sublime dreams had become euphoric reality. Leaving the bedroom door ajar, the new parents walked back into the kitchen where John rummaged in the refrigerator for ingredients to make a quick meal. Then he faced her with outstretched arms and said, "Come here." Melissa rushed to meet them and laid her head over John's heart. Its beating never failed to thrill her, a constant reminder that John still lived and shared his life with her. John wrapped one arm around her waist and stroked her hair with the other hand as he rested his chin on her head. "Well, Melissa, we did it. We're a piercing cry interrupted John's sentence. John Peter had awakened and demanded to be fed. Melissa giggled and grabbed a bottle from the electric warmer on the counter. "While you're making dinner," Melissa said, "I'll tend to our son." By the time Melissa had reached the bedroom, John Peter's face was scrunched purple and he was frantically waving his tiny clenched fists. She set the bottle on the nightstand and lifted her small, squirming son from his bed. "It's all right, John Peter," Melissa said in her most soothing tone. The baby, however, refused her comforting efforts. She tightened her grip on the writhing infant with one hand and reached for the bottle with the other. John Peter chomped down on the nipple, drained the milk in seconds, and howled for more. Melissa carried the crying baby into the kitchen. "Johnny still seems hungry." He lowered the heat and covered the pot with the lid. "Give him another bottle. Dr. Rothgard said to feed him on demand." "Isn't that too much formula at one time?" John shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe he didn't receive enough in the hospital." She had to do something. John Peter was frantic. Melissa took a second bottle from the warmer and sat at the kitchen table to feed him. The baby accepted this feeding much slower than the last one and soon drifted to sleep. With a napkin, Melissa dabbed his dribbles from the corner of his mouth. John pulled biscuits from the oven and then tossed the salad. "Dinner's ready. Shall I return him to the cradle?" "No, I'll do it." Gingerly, Melissa carried the sleeping baby back to the bedroom. This time, he did not stir when she set him down. She hoped John Peter would stay asleep, at least until she and John finished dinner. He lit a candle and opened a bottle of Cabernet for the occasion. After Melissa settled in her chair, John raised his glass. To the Samotas family. Melissa clinked hers against his. Yes, oh yes. They made it only halfway through dinner when John Peter once again bellowed. Melissa started to rise, but John objected. My turn, sit and eat. He can't be hungry. I doubt it. Quite possibly he's lonely. But the baby continued to wail through the closed bedroom door. Melissa helplessly picked at her cream chicken. John returned for another bottle and said, I'm baffled as if he's starving. Call Dr. Rothgard. He leaned against the counter and tilted the bottle to the baby's lips. John Peter slurped its contents and resumed crying before Melissa had finished dialing. John held John Peter near his shoulder and patted his back. Hold on, the receptionist said to Melissa. He's just walking out the door. Melissa cupped her hand over the receiver to drown the baby's cries. John gently jiggled the baby. Despite Melissa's frantic recounting, Dr. Rothgard seemed unconcerned about the baby's crisis. Have you burped him? Sometimes babies confuse air in their stomachs with hunger. John did, but he's still acting hungry. Well, for tonight, give him what he wants. Bring him to the office tomorrow. I'm sure there's a simple explanation for it. Melissa hung up the phone and relayed the information to John. He reached for a bottle while Melissa prepared another batch of formula for the warmer. Well, she said, I know parenting's a hard job, but I thought we'd have a day to get used to it. After consuming his fourth bottle, John Peter once again fell asleep. Melissa began rinsing the dishes, but John stopped her when he returned from the bedroom. I'll clean up, he said. You take a shower while you have the chance. John, too, made it to the shower before John Peter woke again. Remembering Dr. Rothgard's advice, Melissa first burped the baby before giving him yet another bottle. John Peter sucked it dry by the time an incredulous John had emerged from the bathroom. He can't be hungry, Melissa grinned. I'm glad you're taking the middle of the night feeding. John frowned. If this continues, neither of us will sleep. Once Melissa settled John Peter in his crater, he showed no signs of disturbing his parents. Melissa gazed at her sleeping son as John turned back the bed covers. John, he's so sweet, he looks like an angel. He climbed into bed and patted the empty place beside him. Only with difficulty did Melissa resist the urge to continue gazing at the little cherubic face. Nevertheless, John had one or two urges of his own, and he exploded when John Peter interrupted with a shriek, and Melissa broke away to fetch him. Melissa, he's fine. He's a new baby. Melissa flew out of bed and paced the floor with the still screaming infant as John glared at her. Maybe you should just cry for a while. I didn't know you believed in letting babies cry, Melissa shouted over the din. I don't. John Peter chewed on his fists. Blinking back tears, Melissa left the room for a bottle. Why couldn't John understand? She felt disappointed too. She switched on the kitchen light, opened the warmer, and grabbed yet another bottle while John Peter bawled in her ear. Melissa started crying too. As she sat in the chair to feed the baby, she felt John's hand lightly touch her shoulder. I'll take him, John said. Go rest. The bed's emptiness reminded her of last summer when John in his misery had forsaken it. She crawled under the rumpled sheets, jammed her pillow overhead, and cried until she drifted asleep. When she awakened, the luminous numbers in the lighting room read 6 o'clock. Melissa felt John's side of the bed. It was still empty. Deafening silence engulfed the house. Holding her breath, Melissa turned the doorknob and eased open the door. She tiptoed into the living room, pausing at each creak of the floor. John, feet propped on the coffee table, head back, and baby on his chest, was lightly snoring. A pile of empty bottles lay on the floor next to the chair. Melissa had no experience with newborns, but one thing she certainly knew. No baby should go through that much food. She couldn't wait for Dr. Rothgard to fix the problem. But at the visit, Dr. Rothgard gave them startling news. John Peter's lost weight. What? John said, that's impossible. How much did you say he ate yesterday? Over 100 ounces at least, Melissa said. Dr. Rothgard scrawled something Melissa could not read, tore it from the pad and gave it to Melissa. John, hands slightly shaking, began diapering the baby. Don't give him any more formula than this, Dr. Rothgard began. He'll just cry for more, Melissa said. As if on cue, John Peter screamed. John rummaged in the diaper bag for a bottle. Let me finish. In between feedings, feed him some rice cereal if he seems hungry. Give him all the water he'll accept. Bring him back in a week to check his weight, sooner if you're concerned. New Year's Eve traffic jammed the roads. John Peter's inconsolable crying jarred her nerves. Twice, John's eyes closed during the short trip home, and twice Melissa offered to take the wheel. John Peter finally fell asleep when John turned onto their street. The baby did not wake up when John slid him out of the car seat, nor after John laid him down in the cradle. John sat on the bed to remove his shoes and fell asleep, sitting straight up. Melissa returned to the kitchen, reading the directions for the rice cereal. She wanted to be ready when John Peter awakened. When she returned to the bedroom to ready for bed, John had passed out. Because Melissa did not wish to disturb him, she snuggled into her chair with a novel. Soon, John Peter's crying woke her. As Melissa rubbed her eyes, she saw John stumble from the bedroom carrying their wailing son. By the time Melissa reached the kitchen, John was sitting on a chair feeding John Peter a bottle. Yawning, Melissa opened the box of rice cereal. After the baby ate half its contents, he finally dropped off to sleep. Exhausted, Melissa's eyes fell on the stove clock. Midnight. John rose from the table with the baby, smiled, and kissed Melissa's forehead. "Happy first anniversary, Melissa," he said. At dawn, John Peter drank 3 more bottles of formula and polished off the rest of the cereal. John left the house to search for a store still open on a holiday. And 2 hours later, he returned with a case of formula and 3 more boxes of rice cereal. The cereal slowed John Peter's appetite, as Dr. Rothgard had promised it would, and improved his sleep and disposition, but the baby did eat 2 boxes of it, as well as half the formula. "We go back to Shelby in the morning," John said. The next day, when Dottie Sherman laid John Peter on the scale, she said, "He's lost another ounce." Stunned, Melissa looked up at John and then back at Nurse Sherman. "How? Aren't you feeding him?" "Enough for 2 babies," John retorted. "Well, you can discuss that with the doctor." Jim Preston.
Thank you for putting me on the spot.
You're very welcome.
It's the only way I get up here in time. As far as the anthology goes, unfortunately, the part I was going to submit didn't make it in because I didn't send it. That's totally my bad.
But you're in the Cheetah one.
I am in the Cheetah one. Keep that one. I want to read a shorter piece, one that I was rather proud of, and this is part of the anthology that we produced out in New Lenox. And I did read the story to this group before I sent it out, so they gave me a lot of valuable input on it. It's called, I want to find it first, it's called The Woman in the Woods. I remember the confusion flooding my mind as the detective told me my wife's body had been found in the nearby woods. That can't be, I said, over and over. But all the detective could do was let me go through my disbelief before telling me the next steps. Identifying her body, signing the paperwork, talking to the police over and over about her disappearance. So much to do to confirm her death, yet in my mind, I knew it couldn't be true. Last week, Shelley, my wife of 10 years, went out for her usual Saturday morning run and never came home. Yes, she regularly jogged through the woods where the police found the body, but that doesn't mean that's where she died. Killed, actually, according to the police. I wanted them to explain just how this could happen, how a body could just be out there, unnoticed for all this time by other joggers, cyclists, bird watchers, everyone else going through those woods before some random dog walker just happened to find whoever's body that was. No, something didn't add up. They brought me in to identify the corpse they found in the woods. It was a horrible sight. The poor soul had been brutally assaulted. But I could not see Shelley under those wounds. More importantly, in my heart, I knew it wasn't Shelley. Regardless of the discoloration, the bruises and cuts, and everything the scavengers had done to the body, I said, with as much confidence as I could muster, that's not her. The police acknowledged that the body they found didn't have any of Shelley's jewelry or her wedding ring, though those things could have been stolen just like an iPod. Shelley didn't have any tattoos to match, and her fingerprints weren't a matter of public record. I handed over her personal effects so they could try to get some DNA for evidence, and to prove whoever they found in the woods was not my wife. Every time I handed over something to them, they treated me like I was in deep denial, even shaking their heads towards me in pity as they collected her hairbrushes. They saw a man who could not accept such a terrible loss. I did not deny that my wife still had not returned. I just knew in my gut the body they found wasn't hers. I think it became an obsession for the police. They wanted, maybe even needed to solve this case more than even I wanted. As far as I know, they didn't investigate any other leads. They didn't do any more detective work other than to try and prove this was Shelley. Of course, the worst part was that, naturally, they also paid me as a suspect. In the greater scheme of things, that's natural. The husband is almost always the guilty party, so I can't blame them for going after me. I had to submit my own DNA and fingerprints and go through hours of questioning about everything that went on in our lives up until the moment Shelley went out on her run. Their forensic people tried to connect dirt on my shoes to the site she was found, measure the breadth of my hands to match the bruising on the woman's body, and every other little bit of science they could pull. Of course, they lied as well. They told me a witness saw me in the woods where the body was found, and a confession would save me from the death penalty. It was desperation. I never went to those woods, much less went jogging with Shelley. They tried to get me to talk, but I knew nothing about the body they found. If anything, I got a little angry that somewhere, someone's daughter, girlfriend, sister was missing, and the police had that body, but insisted on saying it was my wife. From the moment I called the police to say Shelley didn't come back from her run, the world started to unravel. Suddenly everyone tried calling her phone, contacting me to ask if she had returned, waking me up in the middle of the night looking for new information, organizing searches to sweep large areas as if she was going to magically walk up to them and make everything okay. Deep inside, I knew something horrible had happened. Everyone else wanted this to end as well. I just wanted it to end. Would it have been easier to identify that body as Shelley just so I could go on with the inevitable mourning? Maybe. However, it wasn't her. It couldn't be her. The woman in the woods was the answer to someone else's mystery. I had no right to say anything different. I remember sensing just what would happen on that one day the detective calls me in. They didn't go through their usual routine. It was merely an update. I came in, and they told me at the main desk that they had a DNA match for the woman they found. It wasn't Shelley, just someone who ended up in the woods at the wrong time. They mentioned things like drugs in her system and possible suspects to her murder, but all I felt was relief. I knew they wouldn't harass me anymore about the woman in the woods. They didn't have the answers about Shelley, but at least they could continue looking. They stopped trying to convince me they were right when they were so clearly wrong. Now, I sit at home drinking my coffee and looking at Shelley's empty chair at the table. Occasionally, I get calls or inquiries, but I have nothing new to tell them. Shelley is a missing person, and that is likely all this case will ever amount to. I don't think the police even investigate the case anymore. What leads do they have to follow? All they have is the body of the woman in the woods, and they did everything possible to make that into Shelley. Maybe they would have succeeded if I hadn't been so adamant in telling them that whoever they found wasn't my wife. I'll never know. There are a lot of things about this case I'll never know. All I know for sure is that I buried Shelley deep in a cornfield, and no one will ever find her there.